What is up, everybody? Welcome back to State of the Steelers. This is the post game show. We'll be talking about the Steelers' victory over the Las Vegas Raiders, 23-18, in a game that emotionally was up and down, right? Oh, this on 1 second. There we go. So, Pittsburgh Steelers go out there, get the W. They go 2-1 on the season, and I believe they're tied for first place in the AFC North as the Baltimore Ravens lost earlier today, and the Steelers, the Steelers haven't lost to an AFC team, so I think they actually got the tiebreaker. But this game it started off kind of like what it's been, right? The Steelers go 3-and-out a couple of times, and then it seems like nothing's going. It seems like the same old stuff. And I was a little bit concerned going into this game because based on the film breakdown that I've been able to do, and I've seen that there's been a little bit of a struggle with the zone defense. And, with our offense passing game going up against zone defense, cover two in particular. And the Vegas Raiders run a similar type of zone defense that the San Francisco 49ers run. So I was a little bit kind of worried about that going into this game. And, right off the bat, it just kind of seemed like it was the same old stuff that we'd seen in the last couple of weeks when it came to our offense. But then, boom, Kenny hits a big play down the field. Now, from what I saw from that play, it looked like it was an blitz, and he had the safeties running back, hitting a receiver deep down the center of the field. That way, splitting the safeties is the perfect play, and it was done perfect. The play call was great for that, that type of defense that they were going up against. The pass was perfect. The catch was great, and run after catch, the whole 9 yards, execution, everything to a T. I even was telling some of the guys from, the Unofficial Steelers podcast with Nathan Hines, and we still talked with Mark Davison from Steelers Nation Australia, and I was like, that's a perfect play, a perfect pass, perfect, execution. And then on the very next play that the offense gets out there, Kenny Pickett almost throws a pick six, and I was like, well, that wasn't quite there, right? And so I'm gonna go ahead and try to find out real quick. I don't know. Mike Tomlin hasn't came out yet what the injury status is as far as anybody getting hurt. It didn't look like anybody that did get hurt, stayed out long. I know Levi Wallace went down for a time or two. So did Najee Harris, for a play or two. I'm sorry. But Levi Wallace obviously came back. He actually had himself a pretty good game, having himself a couple of picks there. Najee Harris also came back. I'm not sure if he had the wind knocked out of him or something, but he was able to return. But overall, I thought that the Steelers, defense did fantastic. But let me see if there was any injuries that came out from this game. I don't think so, though. I don't have anything said yet. But the Pittsburgh Steelers, Kenny Pickett goes 16 for 28, 235 yards, average of 8.4, 2 touchdowns, double, touchdown, multiple touchdown game for Kenny Pickett. Congratulations to him. I think that the Steelers offense started to look a little bit better, probably in the second quarter and third quarter. I thought they kind of started to regress a little bit in the fourth, but by the end of the fourth, I thought when it counted, they started to get back into it, right? And although that didn't result with points on the board, it resulted with possession of the ball and victory formation and a win. So, no interceptions for Kenny Pickett. He had 1 sack, lost for 7 yards, a quarterback rating of 0.5. His counterpart that he was going up against, Jimmy Garoppolo, was 28 for 44, 324 yards, 7.4 average, 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 4 sacks for 31 yards, 72.5 rating. And, TJ Watt just does some more TJ Watts out there, getting a couple of sacks out there and being very disruptive. One of those plays and one of the times that TJ got to Garoppolo, it looked ugly. They had him bent backwards. And, I thought it could have been worse than what it was. Fortunately, he did come back into the, and he was healthy and whatnot. But which kind of leads me back, and I know I'm gonna jump, but man, that penalty on Minka Fitzpatrick, that was that was cool. I didn't like it. From watching it live, seeing the replay didn't make sense either. Just didn't like it at all. Now, as far as rushing goes, Najee Harris had 19 carries for 65 yards, 3.4 average, long of 17. He had an all right game. When it counted, he started to get his yards. Now, I did notice that like the defenses are loading up the box, right? And when they're loading up the box, it's just there's not much room there. And when when Jalen Warren comes in, they have to prepare for him, and he is a weapon that can catch the ball out of the backfield. So it's a little bit different of a dynamic, but overall, the Pittsburgh Steelers, had 31 carries for 105 yards, 3.4 average. Kenny had 11 yards. Jalen Warren had 29 on the ground. Connor Hayward, he had a carry, but he didn't get a yard. The Steelers did fairly well against Josh Jacobs. He went 17 for 62 for 3.6 yards per average. I think that's a pretty good measuring tape. The way the Steelers played against Josh Jacobs, or Josh Jacobs' performance was probably similar to what Najee has. And I think the numbers, kind of equate that. And so I think both backs are struggling a little bit, but I think that's because NFL teams are asking their quarterbacks to win games. You know what I mean? And so Jimmy Garoppolo had 2 carries for 7 yards. So they ran for 19 times 69 yards. As far as receiving, Devontae Adams had himself a game against the Pittsburgh Steelers secondary. I thought he was going to be a guy that the Steelers were going to try to double, which they did. And, he's one of those guys that you can't really beat. You just hope to contain. And, the Steelers didn't do very well containing him. He went 13 receptions for 172 yards, 13.2 average, 2 touchdowns on 20 targets. And he was basically, their offense. I mean, his counterpart on opposite of him, Jacoby Myers, he had 7 receptions for 85 yards, 18 long, 12 targets. And, the rest of the guys had just 3 or 1 reception that were out there. For the Steelers, not very many receptions, only 16 total. Our leader was George Pickens with 4 receptions, 75 yards, no touchdowns. Calvin Austin had 2 receptions, 72 yards, 36 average, had the long of 72. He had 6 targets. So did George Pickens. Pat Fryermuth, I felt, got a little bit more used in this game. I think he should have been used a lot more, but he ends up with 3 receptions, 41 yards, and a touchdown on a play action pass that was it was the perfect opportunity against the right defense. The Steelers offense hadn't really shown they were going to be running a ton of play action pass. And I think it just kind of caught the Raiders defense off guard. As far as the defensively, Minka Fitzpatrick had the most tackles with 11. Let's see, I want to see where TJ Watt came in. He came in with 2 sacks, like I thought. Let's see. Marcus Golden had a sack. Keanu Benson, man, he had a sack too. That was impressive, having that pressure from the nose tackle up the middle, getting into Garoppolo's face. It was, the defensive line did good. I just think that, the secondary, I'd like to see a little bit more of Joey Porter. He seemed like he did all right when he was in there. I'm not saying that, Levi Wallace did horrible. I mean, he was going up against Devontae Adams, and he ended up getting 2 picks and the game sealer at the end. So that is what it is. And he wasn't just going up against, Levi Wallace. He was going up against Patrick Peterson as well. And he was just a guy that is trouble. But the Steelers are going to have to fix that because they go up against some pretty strong and stout receivers, just in the AFC North as it is. So, they're going to have to get that together. Now, I did say before the season started that there was going to be an opportunity or a good chance that the Steelers secondary was going to have some growing pains. And that had to do with a lot of like new pieces, right? Patrick Peterson's new to the team, Sullivan's new to the team, uh, Keanu Neal, Casey is in a new position as a starter. Um, you know, Patrick Peterson. So it's just, in my opinion, it was a lot of new pieces, and then you also had a overhaul when it came to the middle linebacker group. So I felt that there might be a little bit of growing pains with the defense there, as far as the passing game goes. And like I said, we've seen that, and I think it's gotten better every game, and it's getting tighter every game. The rushing defense did well tonight. Uh, I'm just watching some highlights on that Calvin Austin touchdown pass, the deep one. Jalen Warren picked up the blitz and gave Kenny the time to throw that ball. Jalen Warren had himself a game. It may not show up in the stat books or in fantasy league because he was on my fantasy team and it didn't show up. But, it showed up when it counted. And him going out there and blocking and getting those touchdowns were well worth it. I mean, not touchdowns, getting those blocks so that the Steelers can get touchdowns. Alex Highsmith had himself a little bit of a quieter game. He ended up getting 2 quarterback hits, no sacks. You know, he's not going to have that amazing game every game. TJ Watt is at an excellent pace. And as good as Alex Highsmith, uh, I think there's only one TJ Watt, right? And so, defensively, I thought the Steelers did well overall. The one thing I don't like is that the Steelers won the turnover battle significantly, had way more sacks on Garoppolo than Kenny Pickett, and the Steelers still only won by 5 points. That bothers me. That would be a little bit, when the defense is giving the offense that many opportunities to put points on the board, they need to have 30 points. They should have had 30 plus points in this game. And I think it's a big letdown. Now, I know a lot of folks are going to say, oh, it's Canada, it's Canada, it's Canada. I really don't think so. There was a point in the game today where Chris Collinsworth, it was on that drive where the Steelers looked well. And Chris Collinsworth said, finally Kenny Pickett threw the ball. That was something that I had been seeing when I was breaking down film, was that he just wasn't letting it rip, right? There'd be guys open in the zone. The schemes worked, and he would dump it off. I have 2 film breakdowns on the channel. Go check them out. You can kind of see what I'm talking about. And I kind of felt that early on in this game, there were some angles that I saw. It looked like it was kind of the same thing happening. Now, I don't know what flipped, but I'm glad it did. I just hope it continues, right? Because it felt like, and I got to go back and watch the tape, but it did feel like Kenny Pickett started to calm down a little bit. I think he got shook a little bit when it came to the 49ers game. That was a defense that was very fast, very physical. And I think at that time, the past 15 opponents that the 49ers have played lost the following game because of how beat up they were from the physicality of that team and that defense. So I think it shook him up a little bit. I think he wasn't seeing ghosts as far as, like Sam Darnold was seeing him in the out in coverage, but I think he was feeling pressure that he was leaving some clean pockets. I noticed that he did that tonight. But like I said, he had a really good drive that went the course of the field, and in that one, he seemed very, confident. He knew where to go with the ball, and he delivered it accurately. And so I'm hoping that this is the start of him back into his groove or mojo, as Mike Tomlin says, and going, because I really don't think that this situation was the coaches or at least the offensive coordinator. Now, I know that he was given a promotion, and I'll put that in quotation. It sounds like he was given more duties, and one being a quarterback coach again. So I wonder, if he's given those duties on top of his play calling duty, then there had to have been a demotion somewhere. And I don't think it was with Canada. And I think it was with maybe perhaps one of the quarterback coaches. I know they had two last year. I'm not sure if they have two this year, but the main guy is Mike Sullivan. And I saw him on the field in the, on the bench talking to Kenny Pickett. But, Canada wants to, or the Steelers want Canada to work specifically with Kenny Pickett. And I think that what it could be is the progressions. Right? Like Kenny Pickett struggles from what I've seen in film with his second or third read on the progression side. And I thought to myself, and I think a lot of the guys that study film started to think maybe the issue isn't so much that he doesn't see the progressions, but what he's taught as far as where he's supposed to look. Where's one, where's two, where's three? And that would be coming from the quarterback coach. And so, we saw him do a little bit better tonight. Maybe perhaps he had a little bit better help as far as those progression goes throughout this week in preparation of this game. So, that minor tweak might help out a little bit and build some confidence with Kenny and start getting this to snowball in the right way, right? Um, let's see. Collinsworth said that the running game didn't change, didn't do any more zone runs. And maybe. I mean, um, it's possible. I'd have to see the all 22 to tell what was going on there. But I did like what they were doing. It seemed like they were doubling up, but they were doing that last week, against the Browns. There was a few plays where the Steelers were doubling up on one player, and on those plays, the running game worked. I guess maybe perhaps you can't do it too often because then it becomes a little bit predictable and or they're going to figure it out. But it was being done last week. It was done this week, and it works. I think that um, it's better than having them going all around and getting lost and missing a block. Because really when things have gone bad is when you have a tackle or a tight end coming from, one side trying to block the nose guard or something. I've seen those type of plays. In fact, one of the plays last week that got blown up was because Darnell Washington got stepped on while he was trying to get to the nose tackle and he fell down and the nose tackle ended up making the tackle in the backfield. So uh, I've seen those type of elaborate things, but that is the creativeness that everybody's wanting, right? The motion, the misdirection, the figuring out what the defense is doing, utilizing that motion, getting them out of their disguises, and it works sometimes. Sometimes it doesn't. You have to have players that can do those type of things. The handoff that Najee had. There was one play where Najee had a handoff that was really weird. Um, Kind of just extended it out too long. But yeah, I'm gonna break down this tape and I'm gonna look at it and see more or less, what went right, what went wrong. I think that when we look at it, I'm pretty sure we're gonna see that maybe Kenny just settled down because I'm hoping that's what it is. I know he struggled with his own last year, and up to this point he's been struggling, but he looked really good on a couple of drives there where he was letting it rip, and especially on the play action pass where he hit Pat Fryermuth in the corner. He was that was an issue for him. Turning his back and turning back in front and processing the field. That had been an issue for him. And in that play, he turned his back, turned around, saw the wide open tight end, and delivered. So there's definitely steps in the right direction. I think that the Steelers have a very good D. I know they give up a lot of points or a lot of yards. I'm sorry, but they end up creating a lot of havoc, a lot of splash. They've gotten, several turnovers, several sacks. I mean, up to this point, Jimmy Garoppolo hadn't been sacked yet. And the Steelers got to him 4 different times. They picked him off a couple of times there, a few times. Um, it was, this defense has its moments. They're flashing. And I think as they grow, as the chemistry builds, they're going to get better. But as far as like winners and losers for this game, The winners, in my opinion, are definitely you got, TJ Watt is a winner. Obviously, I think, Levi Wallace is kinda, you know, he had two interceptions. He closed out the game, but he did give up a lot of yards, and I think he gave up. One of those touchdowns was definitely on him. It was the one where I think it was like fourth down and one or third and one, and they ended up doing a play action pass and hitting him down deep. And um, Patrick Peterson tried to get back there, just didn't get there in time. That was on Levi Wallace, and I'm trying to remember the other pass that Deontay or Adams ended up. Devontae Adams ended up scoring on. I think it was on him as well. So yeah, he had two interceptions. So I'm going to go on and say that. As far as losers in this game, I think overall the team did okay. I don't think anybody got exploited overall, not even on offense. I think Cheeks Corfu, he held his own for the most part. Kenny Pickett only got sacked once. So the offensive line, as far as pass protection goes, they did all right. I'd have to look at the all 22 to see what Mason Cole did as a center and why some of those plays didn't work out. But for the most part, I think that the Steelers, defense and offense there wasn't any losers. Um, as far as like what do I think about moving forward and how I think that the Steelers will do against Houston. I think they're gonna have to take another step. Houston played well today, and they ended up putting up 30 points against Jacksonville, who has been known to have a pretty decent defense. The Steelers are going to have to step up. I'm going to be at that game. So if anybody's going to be in Houston for the Steelers Houston game, hit me up. I'll be there. Let me see what comments we have here. I got a few of them. All righty. All righty. That was fun from Afton. Kathy Ford. It says, hello from, hey, hello. How's it going? Let's see. Steelers Wade show. What's going on? Happy that Muth still are. We were wavering. Yeah, Muth did well. Muth did well. He did well. Did Wallace redeem himself? I would say, maybe. I mean, he had a good game. He had a good game. I just think that he left a lot of he put up Devontae Adams put up a lot of points on him, but he ended up winning the game, and he won the game for the Steelers. Let's see. I thought I saw something about defenses don't fear our passing game. We won't be able to run if we can't be a passing threat. I agree. I agree. This is definitely true. Until the Steelers consistently hit the pass over the run, I think that's going to be the situation that they're just going to load the box, and having a drive or two isn't consistent enough for defenses to back off. Let's see. It's one thing to want Porter Jr. on the field getting playing time, but to give Levi not playing like a safety on that forward run. Yeah. Yeah, he never did sign up to be a safety, but he did a good job today. There was one run where he was able to get Josh Jacobs to go back in. He ended up working as, working to get the tackle in. And I get it. Maybe he didn't sign up to be a safety, but sometimes you can't. You got to get in there and put your face into. When you're the last person of defense on the side, it is what it is. It's not the best position to put him in, obviously. Um, let's see. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Let's see. I hope so too. I hope so too. I went to the Browns game, me and my father, and we ended up obviously winning. Me and my dad haven't seen a game when we're together that the Steelers lose. I've gone to the Houston Steelers games probably. I think there was one game the Steelers lost in Houston. It was like that weird fluky game where like The Steelers basically beat the crap out of them, but they won somehow. The Steelers had like 400 yards total offense, but ended up shooting her in the foot with a bunch of turnovers and things like that. That was the only game I didn't go in recent memory that I can think of, that the Steelers went to go play in Houston going back to 2005. No, this ain't my basement. This is it's a green screen. That's funny. Um, but yeah, the Steelers win. I think that this is going to be a game that I wanted this to be a get right game. And to a certain extent, it was right. The Steelers ended up scoring, over 20 points. Kenny Pickett got 2 touchdowns in a game. His defense came up. You know, I just think that these games should be a lot more lopsided when you have a defense coming up with the interceptions and the sacks that they are doing. The 3 and outs that they're also creating from the other, on the other offense is huge as well. You know what I'm saying? So, um, overall, though, I think I'm along. It might take some time. I think this team, we're not going to really know who they are till probably around that Ravens game. I think at that point when the Steelers are playing in Acrisure against Baltimore, I think that's going to be a pretty good indication of what this team is and who they are going forward. After that point, they can get at certain things, but you know, 4, 5, 6 games into the season, it's usually when you already kind of established your identity. You know what your team is going to be. You know who your players are and how they're going to be, and chemistry starts to build. Now, is there going to be improvement? Obviously, I mean, there's going to in this team. There's probably going to be more improvement than most because they're so new to each other. I mean, Isaac Seumalo, who's new on the offensive line, that's still trying to gel. I think that Broderick Jones needs to come in, whether it's on the left. I'm not too impressed with either of those tackles. I know they held Max Crosby down, but I think he only had like one quarterback hit. I'm not sure if he's the one that got the sack. I think he may have. Um, and on paper that looks good. They held Myles Garrett to without a sack. Max Crosby may have had one, I think. Um, Nick Bosa didn't have a sack, but they had a lot of pressure. And when it came to the running game or even the screen game, where you want an athletic tackle to get out there in front of your running back, Broderick Jones is probably the guy you want out there. He's the athletic kind of tackle that's going to get out there, get in front. He's very quick, very fast. That's why the Steelers went up and picked at number 14 in the first round, is because of his ability and his agility. And so let's put it out there. I want to see freaking Darnell Washington get some targets. I'm getting tired of not seeing him get targeted. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. Now these are the things where I question coaching, right? And I don't know how much Canada has to do with personnel or how much rookies are getting the ball or playing time, because Joey Porter has also been hindered by, snaps or whatever. And, everybody wants to see him play as well and think that he might be a better option out there in many circumstances. And yet, those, defensive players are coming on slowly as well. Keanu Benton isn't a starter where I think he should be. I think Martavius Adams plays better as a tackle than a nose. He was at the tackle position, I believe, when he hit what was it, a Garoppolo on that handoff that didn't go anywhere. So, those type of plays, putting them in their best position works, but it's just like the Steelers just want to hold back on the rookies and hold their exposure. I mean, that's been the term that Mike Tomlins uses. Like, we want to limit their exposure. And I get it, but sometimes if those guys are your better players in certain situations for certain things, let's put the better player out there. I love Connor Hayward. I think he's a great pass catcher and he does some great things with the ball in his hand. I don't think he's the best blocker. I think Washington is. I think that Darnell Washington is a guy that can be a mismatch nightmare in the red zone and or on third and short. Throw the ball up there, let him go up and catch it. You know what I'm saying? And I just don't see why they're not utilizing these players in that manner. It's a little bit frustrating. Let's see. The number two, this 2 TD KP 8 game should end this Canada nonsense. It will not. Every time an L's around, Canada will be drugged back out the red barn. I agree. Excuse me. No, I'm sorry about that. I'm still a little bit under the weather, but I'm a lot better than I have been. Najee looks really uncomfortable out there. Warren seems to fit more in this system so far. I see your point there, and I can say that does seem like that seems possible. I think that Najee is a bigger, bulkier back, and you need a certain offensive line to be able to. When you're using that type of back, you want a bruising offensive line to go with a bruising running back. They're going to hit the defense, hit the line, and then get them ready for that bruiser of a running back to come in there and boom. And that's just to pound out the games. Always moving forward, right? This offensive line isn't that. They're not yet. They're not pushing anybody off the ball. So with that being said, Jalen Warren is more shifty. He even came out and I think it was like on some episode on YouTube somewhere. He was talking about, back in Oklahoma where he played, that he knew he wasn't the fastest, or that he was going to have to work on being shifty and not being able to get tackled by the opposing defenses, and being able to utilize his hips to get out of situations. And I think he's been able to transition that into the NFL, which is why he's done very well. I mean, there's been plays where he's getting hit like 2 yards after the line of scrimmage, and he's just turning around doing this and just fighting for every yard and then diving at the end, to make that 2 yard gain into 7. And I love that about the guy. I think he's going to be a good running back for the Pittsburgh Steelers for a while. Give Najee a break, throw him a bloody ball to loosen up the D line. He caught 74 as a rookie. Now crickets. Yeah, I can see that too. Give him the ball, and that wouldn't hurt. Do some screens. I'm just worried about his speed out there. Running routes. He's not the fastest guy, and linebackers today are, inside linebackers are pretty quick. And if he's doing like an out and he's not doing it fast enough, a linebacker can cut out underneath it, and that can go to the house pretty quick. So, it just kind of depends. But, I think he's all right. I think you have to use him in a certain way. He can't be the outside. That's not his game. Trying to outrun to the edge, that doesn't work for Najee. He has to be a between the tackles kind of running back, right? And if he is catching out of the backfield, it's off a play action pass, things like that. He's not a Le'Veon Bell that could line up as a wide receiver number 2 on the outside and catch the ball as a receiver. He's not there. But I do think if you work to his strength, I think he's going to be a very, very quality back. Let's see. To me, a lot of that was Ben knowing how to utilize Najee. Kenny and the OC ain't there yet. That's true. That could be true. Penalty on Minkah was crap. I agree. Maybe this week the NFL can take 2 times Warren's game check. I hope not. That was rough. When they took an entire game check for what he did last week, which wasn't, he's just playing football. I get it. They're trying to protect people, but if they really were, don't you think they wouldn't, these Thursday night games would be, done differently? I do. If the NFL was really trying to protect the players, I think that the Thursday nights would There would also be a second bye week, going into the week schedule. The Thursday night would be worked off differently. Like for instance, maybe have a team that's coming off of a bye go on to Thursday night, that where they're not turning around and having two games so close back to back, right? So they claim they're trying to do things for player safety, but at the end of the day, I don't know. I don't know. But the Steelers win. They take the W at the end of the day, and you can't complain for that. We'll be breaking down some film later on this week. I'm going to look at the offense. I'm going to look at the defense. I'm going to see what it was that Devontae Adams was doing to our secondary that made him uh, so successful. We're going to break down probably. I'm going to look at all of his targets and break down those. I'm going to look at Kenny Pickett's plays and see what went right, what went wrong. I'll look at some running plays as well. I'm interested in seeing how the offensive line did. Got the games live. You follow the ball more often than you want. When you get to rewind the play and look at every aspect of it is really when you can break down the minutia of what's going on and what's being ran. So I'm excited to see what the Steelers did differently. And if what I see is that Kenny Pickett is reading the zone better, and that's what is going on, and he's making those throws that he wasn't making in the last two games, that's going to be huge. That's going to be huge because that's the part he needs to work on. And we got passes to the tight end this game, not very many, but we had a touchdown to Pat Freiermuth, and that was something that wasn't being incorporated, and I'm glad that it is. But I'm gonna call it a show. It's already 11:30 hour, but please hit that like and subscribe button, ring that notification bell. Like I said, we'll probably be coming out with the video either Tuesday night or Wednesday morning on the first film breakdown. That's typically when they come out. Typically the all 22 drops on Tuesday, so I just have to go through it at that point, put them together, figure out what's going on, and then put it out there for you guys. But without further ado, I appreciate everybody that was here, everybody that commented. Y'all have a great night. Steelers win.